It was a bright, crisp morning when the storm finally broke. I could hear the gunshot echoing across the fields like a clap of thunder on a clear day. 72-year-old Harold Mitchell stood on his front porch, an old double-barrel shotgun gripped tightly in his weathered hands. The blast had sent the HOA patrol officers scrambling back, their clipboards falling into the dirt as they fumbled in panic. "I told you once," Harold said, his voice as solid as stone. "This is private property. You got no business here." The lead officer, a man in a fresh polo shirt with Meadowbrook Community Patrol stitched on the pocket, pointed a trembling finger at Harold. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, old man. We're calling the police right now." Harold didn't flinch. He cracked the shotgun open, letting the spent shell drop to the porch boards beneath his boots. "Go ahead," he said, his voice unshaken. "I'll be right here waiting." But what they didn't know was that this moment had been building for 6 long months, and what came next would change everything for everyone in Meadowbrook County. But before we dive into this incredible story, let me ask you, where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's rewind to where it all began. 6 months earlier, Harold Mitchell woke up to the familiar rooster crowing at 5:15 a.m. He had done it for 47 years, never missing a single morning. The creaky wooden floorboards groaned under his feet as he made his way to the kitchen, the rich smell of coffee filling the old farmhouse his grandfather had built back in 1923. Harold's ranch wasn't big, only about 80 acres of rolling hills, a few dozen cattle, some chickens, and a vegetable garden his late wife Martha had started 30 years ago. Even though she'd passed away 3 years ago, Harold kept that garden going, a way to honor her memory. The ranch sat on the edge of what had once been nothing but farmland. Harold could remember a time when he could stand on his front porch and see nothing but open fields stretching for miles. His nearest neighbor, Tom Patterson, lived 2 miles down the dirt road, and they'd share Sunday dinners and help each other during harvest season. But things had changed. 5 years ago, a big development company had bought up all the land surrounding Harold's property and built a shiny new neighborhood called Meadowbrook Estates. At first, Harold didn't mind the change. People needed homes, and he wasn't the type to stand in the way of progress. He even baked some of his famous apple pies and welcomed the new families. Most of them were friendly enough, young couples with kids who waved when he passed in his old pickup truck. But it wasn't long before the Meadowbrook Homeowners Association, or HOA, arrived, and that's when everything went downhill. The HOA was created to ensure that everyone in the neighborhood followed the rules. Rules about the color of your house, how tall your grass could grow, what kind of mailbox you had. Now, Harold's ranch wasn't even part of Meadowbrook Estates. His family had owned the land long before any of those HOA folks were born. He had the deed to prove it, signed and recorded at the county courthouse. His property was completely separate from the development, but that didn't matter to Brenda Thornton. Brenda was the president of the Meadowbrook HOA, and she ran it like she was the queen of a small kingdom. She was tall, with short gray hair, and she always wore a pantsuit, even on weekends. She carried a clipboard everywhere, jotting down every little thing that didn't meet her standards. Harold first met her one Tuesday morning in March when he was out in his yard repairing a section of his old wooden fence. His cattle had been using that fence line for years, and it needed fixing before they wandered off. A shiny white SUV pulled up, and Brenda stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Good morning," she said, but her tone was far from friendly. "I'm Brenda Thornton, president of the Meadowbrook Homeowners Association," she said. Harold wiped the sweat from his brow, nodded politely, and said, "Morning, ma'am. What can I do for you?" Brenda didn't waste time. She looked down at her clipboard and said, "Well, Mr. Harold, I'm here to discuss some concerns raised by the community." "Concerns?" Harold repeated, leaning against the fence post. Brenda went on, "Your property, Mr. Harold. It's become quite an eyesore. The residents of Meadowbrook Estates paid good money for their homes, and they expect a certain standard." Harold was taken aback. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this ranch has been here for 100 years. It was here long before your neighborhood. Brenda's glasses sat perched on her nose as she looked at Harold with that condescending smile. That may be true, but times change, Mr. Harold. We live in a community now, and in a community, everyone needs to follow the rules. She handed him a list of violations. According to the HOA, his fence was too old and needed replacing. His barn needed a new coat of paint. His cattle stank up the neighborhood. His rooster was too loud, and his old pickup truck was an eyesore that should be parked inside a garage. Harold couldn't believe it. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I'm not part of your HOA. I never signed any papers. I never agreed to any rules. This is my land, and it's been my family's land for generations." Brenda's smile never wavered. "Mr. Harold, I understand this may be difficult, but the world moves forward. Either you move with it, or it moves right over you." The next few weeks were filled with official-looking letters threatening fines and legal action. Harold threw them all in the trash, refusing to be bullied. But things only escalated when the HOA patrol car showed up. The first time Harold saw one of the patrol cars, it was a white sedan with Meadowbrook Community Patrol written on the side. The young officer in the car, a nervous kid named Kevin, had a camera and was taking pictures of Harold's property. Harold calmly walked up to the car, gave the officer some homemade cookies, and asked him if he thought what the HOA was doing was right. Kevin was hesitant, but he admitted that he didn't agree with the harassment. Harold thought things might improve after that, but they didn't. Soon, Harold was waking up to find HOA officers walking across his land without permission, taking measurements and snapping pictures. When Harold confronted them, they brushed him off, saying they had permission from the HOA board. That was when Harold decided enough was enough. One morning, when Harold saw Brenda and two patrol officers trespassing on his land, he calmly walked over and told them to leave. When they refused, Harold called the sheriff's office and demanded they be removed. After a tense confrontation, the officers left, but Harold knew the fight wasn't over. He hired a lawyer and started gathering evidence to fight back. He also discovered that Brenda and the HOA were being paid off by a big-time developer named Richard Crane, who wanted to buy Harold's land for cheap. When Harold confronted Brenda with this information, she laughed and said that the land would soon be condemned and sold, whether Harold liked it or not. The tension reached a boiling point when, one morning, the HOA officers came back with Crane himself, demanding Harold sell his land. Crane offered him a meager $300,000, but Harold refused. After a tense standoff, Harold fired a warning shot into the air, sending the patrol officers running. Crane, however, stood his ground, convinced that money and power would win the day. But Harold wasn't done yet. Kevin, the young officer Harold had befriended, came to him with crucial evidence, documents proving that Brenda had been bribed by Crane to take Harold's land. With this information, Harold went public, reaching out to a reporter who helped expose the corruption. The state attorney general's office launched an investigation, and soon Brenda was arrested on charges of bribery and fraud. But it wasn't just about winning. It was about something bigger. Harold's fight wasn't just for his land. It was for the idea of community and standing up against the forces of greed and corruption. In the end, Harold found himself not only fighting for his home, but for the homes of others who had been pushed aside by the same forces. As the story spread, more people came forward, offering their support. Harold's lawyer, Patricia Chun, worked tirelessly to build a case against Crane. The neighborhood rallied behind him, and soon the HOA was dissolved. Crane was convicted and sent to prison, and Harold's land was his once more. The victory wasn't just his. It was for everyone who had been trampled by the system, the ones who didn't have a voice until Harold stood up and said enough was enough. And when Harold stood in front of the new HOA board, he didn't just see victory. He saw a community that had come together to fight for what was right. Harold's story is a reminder that sometimes the fight for what's right doesn't come easily. It's hard, it's exhausting, but in the end, it's worth it. Now, here's the question for you. What would you do if you were in Harold's shoes? Would you fight back or just walk away? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've ever stood up to a bully, share your story. Let's hear it.